What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Nolan TCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and this time, it's for Prank Kids. So I have decided to jump back on the Prank Kids train with the success in the meta recently. I kind of have been spending a lot of time playing Dragon Maids. Probably should put that aside and go back to Prank Kids, considering that I had a lot of success with this at the start of last format, and with the new ban list, this deck kind of has much better matchups, so why not pick the deck back up and give it another go? But before we do get started, as always, please remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people to the channel. And let's get on into the deck profile. Okay, so starting us off, we have, of course, 3 copies of Prank Kids Lampsies. So we have the Burn 500, we're just going to play 3 of each in this build. So we're playing 3 of the Burn 500 summon, 3 of the Add 1000 Life Point summon, and 3 copies of the Foolish Burial and summon. Then, of course, I don't know why I stopped, because we are then playing 3 copies of the Banish 1, Draw 1, and Summon. This is the worst one. We're playing 3 copies of all of them because we are playing a Desires build. In this deck, I do pretty heavily side. Like, you can probably fit about 8 cards of side deck in and out of this at any time. So when you are going second, you can just side into like a heavy going second package. But at the moment, this is just designed to be as consistent as possible as a going first build, but still having that bit of interaction as you kind of get through the turns. Of course, we do have another chain blocker, and that's 3 copies of Parallel Exceed. In this deck, you want to try and chain block that first summon as much as you can, just to make sure it resolves. Then, of course, we get into a bit of a hand trap lineup, so playing 3 copies of Ash, and 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Typically, these can be switched to anything that kind of suits your local meta, that was weird. But yeah, you can switch these up to whatever you'd like. If you do want to play more budget options, that always is fine. You can play stuff like Effect Veiler, things like that. Then we get into our spell cards. We are playing 3 copies of Prank Kids Place, but no Terraforming. I kind of felt as though 15 was like the perfect kind of suitable number of starter cards, given that we do have Desires in the deck as well. So the 3 copies of Prank Kids Place came in fine and dandy, is the way we want to say that sentence. Then we get into the rest of our Prank Kids spells. So we've got, of course, 2 copies of the Prank Kids Pandemonium. Sorry, 3 copies. I don't know why I say 2 copies. It's 2 copies of the next one. We're playing 2 copies of Pranks. Typically, when I'm siding for going second, I will take out one of these as well. Then, of course, we have 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Surprisingly, again, this is another card that I side out when I'm going second. So I will typically... I'll go through it at the end here. So, next off, we've got 3 copies of Forbidden Droplets. You can just switch this for any traps or hand traps that you desire if you don't want to play like the expensive cards. This is the most expensive card in the deck. The rest of it's reasonably cheap, so you can cut this, play something else instead if you do want to go that way. Then, of course, for the last spells, we've got the Power 1-ofs. We've got 1 Instant Fusion, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Called by the Grave. This just lets you pretty much extend through everything. This lets you extend through some things, and this lets you extend through some things. These do basically just say, hey, you hand-trapped me. Okay, I'll just keep playing. Then we've got, of course, rounding out the main deck, 2 copies of Prank Kids Plan. So when I'm side decking in this build, typically I'll side deck out 1 copy of Prank Kids Plan, the 3 copies of Pot of Desires, 1 Prank, then I'll also side out 1 Parallel Exceed, and 1 Prank Kids Roxy's. So that gives me, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 cards of side out. Where was the 8th? I do typically side out 8. What was my 8th side out? No, maybe I just side out 7. Maybe I'm just an idiot who can't count. Or maybe sometimes I side out an Ash, or I side out like a Forbidden Droplet. That's probably the way I went. Okay, now next off we have the extra deck, and of course we are playing 3 copies of the Prank Kids Meow Meow. Normal summon, full combo. 1 card combos are good in the game, and this facilitates them. Just be aware that this is a once per turn when you're summoning it, so you can't go into it again to try and trigger off other plays. If this card wasn't once per turn, you'd be able to do some like incredible combos, simply off just being like, yeah, Meow Meow, away we go, get another one, Meow Meow, away we go, get another one. And then that'd fuel up your Balinx effects in Grave, where this just banishes itself, doesn't activate to use the Tributous Cost effects. Then we've got, of course, next off, just 2 copies of Prank Kids Do Doodle Do. I didn't find I ever needed a 3rd copy in this build, so I didn't really see a need to have it. Just 2 is fine. You use like the first in your opening combo, of course, to search that spell or trap card. The second one will come in a grind game, but typically in this deck, I'm winning on turn 4. So the second Do Doodle Do will get used on that turn 4, but it's not super necessary on that turn 4. Then after that, of course, we do have the 1 copy of the Prankid's Bow Wow Bark to give us that recursion on the opponent's turn. If you do open, not full combo, but like some semblance of a combo, the Bow Wow Bark can become important, so it is a good card to have. Then I am, of course, playing 1 copy of Rip Roaring Rooster, with Eldritch in the meta at the moment, as well as kind of the way Shaddoll decks kind of play through at my locals. I felt as though 1 copy of Rip Roaring Rooster was great. If you can establish this on board, hopefully that schism's never going to resolve, so Rip Roaring Rooster for the win. Then, for the rest of the links, we're playing 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn and the 1 copy of Access Code to climb into to try and push for game. Typically, I only ever made this if I was trying to just make my Access Code as big as possible. Otherwise, the Access Code was just getting made with like a Bow Wow Bark and a Doo-Doodle-Doo. Then next off, we've got the fusions. I am, of course, just playing 1 copy of Battle Butler. Typically in this deck, in the past, I would have played something like a Thunder Dragon Fusion and Polys, which would make the Battle Butler much more live. However, I feel as though in this like newer version of the build, where you're not focusing on fusion summoning as much, and you just want to kind of do it that once in your turn, the Battle Butler at 1 is perfectly fine. After that, of course, though, we've got 1 copy of Rocket Ride and 1 copy of Weather Washer for your Reborns. Opponent's turn, your turn. Then, because we do have a bit of flex, the last fusion we're playing is 1 copy of Elder Entity Entis. This card is essentially just here as a target to get Maximist, because typically, Prankids, people see it, they're like, oh, there's probably not a lot of room in the extra deck, I can Maximus you. So, the Entis has come in now for that second Battle Butler, just to make sure that that doesn't go off. And of course, that is going to be chain blocked, because we do have 1 copy of Totally Awesome. So you can just go like, send Entis, send Toad. Toad can either get itself back or get back the water, and then the Entis is chain blocked perfectly fine. And then the last card in the extra deck is 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. But that wraps up here for the deck profile for this one. So as always, if you do have any recommendations or things you would change, make sure to comment them down below. I feel as though you could possibly play a blind second version of this build and just play like 15 to 18 hand traps. That is a perfectly good reasoning. For my side deck, I am siding stuff like 1 copy of Mystic Mine, because all this stuff tributes as cost, so Mystic Mine is not a terrible option for the deck. You can even consider playing it at like 3 in the main deck if you just want to like slap down a Mystic Mine and then control if you're going second. Of course, we're playing like stuff like Evenly, Ice Dragon's Prison, Triple Tactics, Nibiru, Prankatops, just general side deck cards that are great. But yeah, you can definitely really fit a lot into this main deck if you do want to go with that. I just felt as though the 9 was enough to kind of start off with the deck, and as I'm refining it a bit more and tuning it to my locals, more hand traps can definitely come into the main deck as we go through. But, as always, I've been Ben from Nolan TCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.